Good evening. I am Joseph. To my new friends, my new audience, I offer my deepest welcome. Your presence here is not merely noted, it is felt. It is the fuel for this journey we undertake together. In a world of noise, you choose to seek signal. You choose to question, to wonder, to demand clarity from the shadows. For that I thank you. You are valued here. You are essential. Now let us begin. The story I must tell you tonight does not start with a shout, but with a silence. A silence so deep and so prolonged it has become a sound of its own. It is the silence of a Tennessee hollow in the deep hours of night. It is the silence of a waiting telephone that never rings. It is the silence that has followed the name Summer Wells for over 4 long years. Imagine a 5-year-old girl with bright eyes and strawberry blonde hair. Imagine a modest home nestled in the rugged, green embrace of the Appalachian foothills, a place where the woods are both a playground and a boundless, ancient wall. On a June afternoon, Summer was there. And then, in a heartbeat traced by the slow arc of the sun, she was not. What followed was a storm of pure human effort. Search teams, 1,000 strong, combing through creek beds and thickets. Helicopters beating the air with their mechanical hearts. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children etching her face into the nation's conscience. It was a crescendo of desperate hope. And then, the music stopped. The national news crews packed their satellite trucks. The volunteers, exhausted and heartbroken, returned to their lives. The frantic energy dissolved into a grim, settled dust. The investigation, we were told, never stopped. But its sound did. It became a whisper in a back room, a file in a drawer, a cold case waiting for a spark. That spark came last November. With no fanfare, a single paragraph from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation landed like a stone in still water. Agents had executed a search warrant on a property in the 3500 block of Van Hill Road. The location was specific. It was deliberate. It was 9.5 miles from the Wells family home. The property, 27 acres, was owned by a man named Paul Hill, a relative of a relative. The news cycle flared for a day, a brief, blinding flash of maybe. Then, the silence returned. Deeper and more profound than before. This second silence is different. It is not the silence of absence, but of expectation. It is the silence that follows a question asked in a quiet room. Why that property? Why now? What did they know that led them there, and what, in God's name, did they find? In the absence of official answers, the human mind does what it must. It wanders. It speculates. It constructs narratives from the scraps of geography and circumstance. And in the dark corners of the internet, in the hushed conversations of those who follow this case with a painful devotion, a theory began to take shape. A theory so visceral, so profoundly unsettling, that most dare not speak it above a whisper. It is a theory written in the language of the land itself. The property is 27 acres. It is isolated. And it is a place where, by reports, livestock was kept. This simple, rural fact became the cornerstone of a terrible idea. An idea that this was not a place to hide a body, but a place to erase one. My friends, to understand the terrifying weight of this notion, we must journey outside this Tennessee hollow. We must look into the cold eyes of history, to places where the unthinkable has already been proven true. There was a farm in British Columbia, a place of rolling fields and grazing pigs. Its owner was a man named Robert Picton. For years, women from Vancouver's downtown east side vanished. Their disappearances were met with shrugs, with prejudice, with silence. Then, in 2002, the police arrived at that farm. What they began was not a search, but an excavation. A forensic pilgrimage. For months, they sifted soil through screens, they ran earth on conveyor belts, they employed anthropologists to read the stories in fragments of bone. They spent $70 million in the effort. They proved that pigs are omnivores. They are opportunistic. They are efficient. Picton himself bragged to an undercover officer about the destructive power of his livestock. The women were gone, consumed, leaving behind only a horrific, fragmented puzzle. Then, travel further back. to a farm in Indiana at the turn of the 20th century. A woman named Belle Gunnis, strong and imposing, ran a household of horror. She lured suitors with promises of marriage, only to murder them for their money. And her disposal method? Her hog pen. When authorities finally grew suspicious and dug into the soft earth of those pens, they found a ghastly assembly, a sack containing hands, feet, a head. Dozens of depressions dotted the land, each a potential grave. The hogs had done their work. The full tally of her victims was lost to their hunger. These are not campfire tales. They are forensic fact. They establish a precedent that chills the blood. Given time and access, livestock can be agents of obliteration. Now the mind, against its own will, returns to those 27 acres in Tennessee. It considers the isolation. It considers the timeline, not hours or days, but years of possibility. It does the grim arithmetic. If this was the destination for a terrible secret, what evidence could possibly remain? Not a body, surely. Perhaps not even a full bone. But a fragment? A tooth? A single, stubborn shard that resisted the calcium-craving hunger? This is the speculation that now haunts the Summerwells case. It is the shadow that fell when the TBI left that property and said nothing more. It transforms the search from a hunt for a child into a hunt for a ghost. A hunt for the faintest biological echo. This theory, as it leaked from the dark web into broader forums, split the community of followers like an axe blow. The digital town square erupted. One side recoiled in moral horror. "How dare you?" they typed, their anger palpable. "This is a family's tragedy. This is ghoulish speculation. You are adding to the family's pain with this vile fan fiction." For them, even considering the idea was a form of desecration. The other side, however, argued from a cold place of logic. "We are not being ghoulish," they countered. "We are being realistic. The police searched that specific place for a specific reason. We must follow the evidence, no matter where it leads, no matter how ugly the path." They pointed to the sheer, terrifying efficiency of the method. They asked, if you wanted a secret to stay buried forever, is there a more final solution? And caught in the gale of this debate, buffeted by these horrifying new whispers, was the Wells family. Their nightmare, which began with a missing child, had metastasized. It was now a missing child surrounded by a maelstrom of suspicion, dark theory, and unbearable public scrutiny. Every past interview was exhumed and re-examined under this new, harsh light. The grief on their faces, once seen as raw and authentic, was now parsed by amateur body language experts on YouTube. A sigh became a sign of stress, a moment of composure, evidence of coldness. The inconsistencies that haunt every traumatic memory, the precise timeline of that afternoon, who was where and when, were no longer seen as the fog of shock, but as potential cracks in a story. The family's supporters saw parents being crucified by the internet, their every human moment weaponized against them. The skeptics saw a narrative that never quite added up, a puzzle with pieces that refused to fit unless force was applied. The search of Paul Hill's property poured gasoline on this fire. It introduced a new character, a new location, a new vector for the tragedy. It made everyone ask, what is the connection? Is it a direct one, or a terrible coincidence? The weight of the public's gaze, which had once been diffuse, now found a new point of focus. And through it all, the official silence from law enforcement remained a stone wall. They would not confirm the dark theory. They would not deny it. They would not say if soil samples were taken in bulk. They would not say if forensic anthropologists were on site. They would not say if they were looking for a body, or for the memory of one. This is where we stand tonight, you and I. On a knife's edge. Before us lies a landscape of utter tragedy. A family living in an endless, private hell. A community scarred by a loss that feels collective. A public, represented by you and me, desperate for resolution, for justice, for an end to the wondering. The search of that property proved one thing incontrovertibly: the investigation is not dead. It is alive. It is following leads that are 4 years cold, but still have a scent. Someone, somewhere, knows something. That is the foundational truth of this case. The terrifying theory of disposal is just that, a theory. But it is a theory born from the marriage of geography and grim historical fact. It is a possibility that must live in the room, as ugly as it is, because to ignore it is to ignore a very real, very final method that has been used before to hide the truth. So, what are we left with? We are left with a little girl's smile on a missing poster. We are left with 27 acres of quiet land that holds its secrets tight. We are left with a family trying to survive under a microscope of suspicion. We are left with a public, hearts divided between compassion and a thirst for truth. And we are left with that echoing, resonant, deafening silence. The question that hangs in the air now is not just, "Where is Summer Wells?" The question has become, "What is left to find?" The answer to that question will define this case forever. It will determine whether this story ends with a recovery, with a trial, or with a mystery that sinks into the hills forever, as silent as the grave it may have become. This is the burden of the story. This is the path we walk together. The search for Summer Wells continues. And we will be here, watching, waiting, and hoping, against all odds, against all darkness, for a light to break through. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for caring. The journey continues. Stay with me.